poor boy helps an old man who has fallen. But what he didn't know was that he was a millionaire. Let's take a step back to understand what happened. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It was a cold, overcast morning in New York City. The downtown area was as bustling as ever, with hurried people navigating the streets and cars jockeying for position on the avenues. Henry, an elderly man with gray hair and a face etched by time, exited a small cafe holding a cup of hot cappuccino in his hands. As he strolled absent-mindedly, an uneven patch of sidewalk caught him off guard. He stumbled, spilling his coffee and landing awkwardly on the ground. The fall was abrupt, and Henry felt a sharp pain in his knee. He glanced around, hoping someone might lend him a hand. But people hurried past, some even averting their eyes, seemingly ignoring his plight. He tried to get up on his own, but the impact had been too severe. As he struggled to stand, he heard a soft, concerned voice. "Sir, are you all right? Let me help you." Looking up, he saw a thin boy dressed in worn clothes and shoes riddled with holes. It was Tommy, a child who couldn't have been more than 10 years old. He reached out to Henry, helping him to his feet with considerable effort. Henry was taken aback. "Thank you so much, young man. You're very kind," he said, brushing the dirt off his clothes. Tommy smiled shyly, shaking his head. "No need to thank me. I just did what anyone should do." These words struck Henry in an unexpected way. The boy, despite his humble appearance, showed a maturity and kindness that seemed rare for someone so young. Henry reached into the pocket of his coat and pulled out a $50 bill. He offered it to Tommy, saying, "Here, kid, get yourself something nice, maybe some chocolate or whatever you'd like." Tommy hesitated, staring at the money. "That's not necessary, sir. I helped because I wanted to, not because I expected anything in return." Henry persisted, gently placing the bill into the boy's hand. "It's a gift, not a payment. Please take it." Tommy looked at the money, then back at Henry, and a genuine smile lit up his face. In a surprising gesture, he threw his arms around the old man, hugging him tightly. Henry was startled but deeply moved by the act. "This will help us so much. Thank you so much," the boy said, his voice trembling with emotion. Still reeling from Tommy's unexpected kindness, Henry watched as the boy walked away with the $50 bill in hand. There was something about Tommy that stirred a deep curiosity in the elderly man. He reflected on the boy's simple gratitude and the sincerity of that hug, something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Henry, known for his cold demeanor and seriousness in business, felt touched in a way he couldn't quite explain. Compelled by an almost instinctual intuition, he decided to follow the boy from a safe distance. He watched as Tommy carefully crossed the street and entered a small local market. From outside, Henry watched as Tommy darted through the aisles of the market with surprising agility. The boy wasn't picking out candy or toys, as Henry had expected for a child his age. Instead, Tommy selected basic items: a bag of rice, a can of beans, bread, and milk. He counted every penny carefully, making sure the money would stretch far enough. When he exited, carrying a simple bag, the boy looked radiant, as though he had just won a great prize. Henry followed him again, his curiosity growing with every step. Tommy walked briskly, heading into a narrow, dimly lit alley. At the end of the path, he stopped in front of a makeshift shelter built from tattered tarps and scraps of wood. "Yay! We've got good food tonight," Tommy exclaimed excitedly as he pushed back the entrance flap. Inside, Henry spotted a small girl with disheveled blonde hair, sitting on a thin blanket spread over the cold concrete floor. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, and her eyes sparkled as she looked at her brother. "Tommy, you did it. I'm so hungry," she cried. Tommy smiled as he knelt beside her. He began pulling items from the bag, while the little girl, Lily, threw her arms around him, full of gratitude. Henry stood frozen, observing the scene. His heart, which he thought was unshakable, seemed to tighten. He had never witnessed anything so pure and yet so heartbreaking at the same time. The children radiated genuine joy, despite their dire circumstances. Slowly, Henry stepped closer, unsure of what to say, but determined to learn more about this family. Tommy was organizing the food next to Lily when he noticed someone approaching. He quickly stood, placing himself protectively in front of his sister. When he recognized Henry, his expression shifted from caution to worry. "Do you want the money back? I swear I only used it to buy food," Tommy said, his voice trembling yet steady. Henry raised his hands in a calming gesture. "No, my boy, the money is yours. I was curious. I wanted to understand why you said it would help so much." Tommy hesitated, glancing at Lily before letting out a sigh. "My mom's trying to find work. Ever since my dad left, we lost our home. Sometimes we can get a spot at the shelters, but there isn't always room. So I stay here with my sister while my mom looks for a job." He paused, looking at the ground, clearly embarrassed to share his reality. Henry took in the makeshift shelter, the thin blanket, and the children's tattered clothing. He could feel the cold seeping through the concrete floor and smell the dampness in the air. "Don't you have anyone who can help you? Relatives, friends?" he asked gently. Tommy shook his head. "No, my mom's tried everything. She's great at cleaning houses and cooking, but no one wants to give her a chance. They say she doesn't have references." He paused, then added, "I just want my sister to be safe. She's little, you know? I do what I can, but it's not enough." Henry felt a heaviness in his chest as he listened to Tommy's words. It was hard to fathom how someone so young carried such a heavy burden. He glanced at Lily, who clutched a piece of bread that Tommy had just handed her, and saw the innocence that still lingered despite their hardships. "You shouldn't be living like this," Henry murmured, more to himself than to them. Then, as if making a sudden decision, he said, "I want to meet your mother. When she gets back, wait for me. I'm not going anywhere until I've spoken with her." Tommy looked at him skeptically at first, but the sincerity in Henry's eyes made him nod. "All right, she shouldn't be long." The boy returned to sit with Lily, sharing the little food they had, while Henry stood nearby in silence, trying to process everything he had just witnessed. The sky began to darken, and the dim light from the street lamps cast long shadows over the alley. Henry remained still, leaning against a wall, watching Tommy and Lily. The way the boy cared for his sister left a deep impression on the old man. He wondered how many nights these children had endured the cold, hunger, and abandonment of the streets. Before long, a female figure appeared at the end of the alley. Sarah, Tommy and Lily's mother, was a young woman whose features bore the marks of exhaustion. She wore an old coat and worn-out boots, and her eyes carried a mixture of worry and resignation. Yet when she saw her children, a smile spread across her face, momentarily dispelling the darkness around her. "Mommy!" Lily cried, running to her. Sarah scooped her up in a tight embrace, kissing her forehead, before turning to Tommy. "Did you get food?" she asked, her voice filled with cautious hope. Tommy nodded, holding up the bag with the remaining groceries. That was when Sarah noticed Henry. Her expression hardened with suspicion as she pulled Lily closer and stepped forward, shielding her children. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice firm despite the evident concern. Henry took a step forward, removing his hat in a polite gesture. "My name is Henry. I'm just a man who was fortunate enough to be helped by your son today. He saw me fall on the street and didn't hesitate to help." He offered a gentle smile, trying to put her at ease. "I wanted to learn more about him, and about you." Sarah glanced at Tommy, who nodded to confirm Henry's story. She relaxed slightly, though her caution remained. "Sir, thank you for what you said. My son is a good boy. He does everything he can to help. But we're fine. We don't want to bother anyone." Henry shook his head, noting the dignity in her words. It's not about being a bother. I couldn't help but notice that you're in a situation no one should have to endure, especially children. I want to help. In fact, I have a proposal. Sarah frowned, her wariness returning. What kind of proposal? Henry took a deep breath before continuing. I live in Boston. I have a big house and I've been looking for someone to take care of it, cleaning, organizing, that sort of thing. I can see that you're hardworking and you've raised a boy with a heart of gold. I think you deserve a chance. He paused, gauging her reaction. There's a small house behind my property where my staff used to live. It's empty now, but it would make a wonderful home for you. I want you to move there and start a new life. Sarah's eyes widened, surprised by the generosity of the offer. She held Lily tighter, as though trying to shield her from a promise that seemed too good to be true. Why would you do this for us? You don't even know us. Henry smiled, though his gaze carried a hint of emotion. Because today your son taught me something I had forgotten: selfless kindness. He helped me without expecting anything in return. That's rare. I want to pay that kindness forward and ensure that you have a chance to get back on your feet. Sarah remained silent for a moment, processing his words. She looked at her children, who were watching her anxiously. Finally, she murmured, "If this is real, if you're truly offering us this opportunity, then I accept." Henry nodded, relieved. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call, asking his driver to pick them up. As they waited, he reassured Sarah that they would soon have a safe place to call home and comforts they hadn't experienced in a long time. Not long after, a sleek black car pulled up at the entrance of the alley. The driver, a tall, well-dressed man named Edward, stepped out and opened the door for Henry and the family. Tommy and Lily stared wide-eyed at the car, as if it were something out of a dream. Sarah hesitated, still incredulous about the situation. But Henry, with a calm smile, made a gentle gesture encouraging them to enter. "Come on, don't worry. Edward is a good man, and he'll get you there safely. Everything is all right," with a slight nudge from Tommy, who urged, "Let's go, Mom." Sarah finally relented. They all got into the car, and Henry settled in next to them, explaining along the way what awaited them. He described the cozy house behind his property, the work Sarah would do, and the nearby school for Tommy and Lily. As Henry spoke, Tommy couldn't hide his excitement. "We're gonna have a real house, Mom, with bedrooms and a kitchen." Lily, sitting on Sarah's lap, interrupted, "And will there be a bed, Tommy? Will I get to sleep in a real bed?" Hearing their questions, Henry felt a pang in his heart. He had never stopped to think about how something so simple could be a luxury for others. With a warm tone, he replied, "Yes, you'll have all of that. And I promise it will be a place where you'll feel safe." After a few hours on the road, they arrived at Henry's mansion. The exterior lights illuminated the grand facade, with its white pillars and enormous windows. Tommy and Lily stared in awe, their mouths agape, unable to believe what they were seeing. Sarah held Lily's hand tightly, as if she needed something to ground her in the face of such grandeur. "Welcome," Henry said with a gentle smile. He led them through the gardens to the small house at the back of the property. Though smaller in scale, the space was incredibly cozy. It had 2 well-decorated bedrooms, a fully equipped kitchen, and a comfortable living room. Everything was immaculately clean and ready to welcome its new occupants. Tommy dashed off to explore, followed by Lily, who laughed with excitement. Sarah stood frozen at the doorway, her eyes glistening as she took it all in. This is so much more than we could have ever imagined. "I don't even know how to thank you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Henry placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Thank me by creating wonderful memories here. This place is your home now." He then instructed Edward to take the family to a nearby supermarket to stock up on groceries. As they drove away, Henry stood in the doorway of the small house, reflecting on how Tommy's simple act of kindness had set this chain of events into motion. The following days were transformative for Sarah, Tommy, and Lily. For the first time in a long while, they woke up in a place where they felt safe. Sunlight streamed through the spotless windows of their little home, and the air was filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm bread. Sarah had already started her work at Henry's mansion, cleaning the spacious rooms and organizing everything with meticulous care that reflected her deep gratitude. While Sarah worked, Tommy and Lily explored the vast gardens of the property. To them, it was like a magical world, with towering trees, colorful flower beds, and even a small pond filled with golden fish. Henry often watched them from a distance, sitting on a patio chair with an open book in his lap. He would smile at the sound of their laughter, a sound that seemed to breathe new life into his home. One morning, Henry called Tommy over to sit with him. The boy came running, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Tommy, tell me more about school. Are you enjoying it?" Henry asked, closing his book. "I really like it, Mr. Henry. The teacher says I'm good at math, but the best part is that Lily gets to go, too. She's amazing at drawing. She says she wants to be an artist when she grows up." Tommy spoke with such enthusiasm that Henry couldn't help but smile. "That's wonderful to hear, Tommy. You and your sister have bright futures ahead of you. And, if you ever need help with your studies, you can always come to me. I love teaching and learning. How about we start with something today?" Tommy's eyes widened in surprise. "You do that for me?" Henry nodded. "Of course. Who knows? Over time, I might even teach you a thing or two about business. What do you think? Business? Like the ones on TV, with men in suits and big offices?" Tommy asked, wide-eyed. Henry chuckled. "Something like that. But you don't need a suit to learn. What matters most is having a good heart and an open mind. And you already have both." That afternoon, Henry and Tommy spent hours together. Henry showed the boy how to do quick calculations using practical and fun examples. He also shared stories about how he started his career and the lessons he had learned over the years. Tommy listened intently, treating every word as if it were a precious secret. When Sarah returned from her work at the mansion, she found the two of them in the patio, laughing and debating the best way to solve a math problem. She stood quietly for a moment, feeling a wave of gratitude and relief. For the first time in a long while, hope had returned to her life. Days turned into weeks, and life on Henry's property became a safe haven for Sarah and her family. Lily, who had once seemed fragile and fearful, now ran through the gardens with boundless energy and contagious laughter. Tommy, on the other hand, spent more and more time with Henry, learning not only about math and business but also about life itself. One calm afternoon, Henry invited Tommy to help him in the library, one of the mansion's most magnificent rooms. The shelves stretched high, filled with books of all colors and sizes. Tommy was mesmerized, his eyes scanning titles he could barely pronounce. "Have you read all of these?" he asked, his voice full of awe. Henry chuckled softly. "Not all of them, but a good number. Books were my companions for many years. They taught me incredible things and took me to places I never imagined. And now, I want you to discover the power of stories and knowledge too." Tommy carefully picked up a book as if it were something sacred. "I've never had a book before. Can I take this one?" He held up a worn copy of The Little Prince. "Of course, it's yours. That book holds a very important lesson. Sometimes, the most essential things can't be seen with the eyes but felt with the heart." Henry smiled as he watched Tommy's excitement. Later that day, Henry took Tommy to the tennis court on the property. "Have you ever played tennis?" he asked. Tommy shook his head. "No, sir. I didn't even know this game existed." "Perfect. Then I'll teach you. It's a game that requires patience, strategy, and focus, qualities that are just as useful in life." The two spent hours on the court. At first, Tommy was clumsy, missing most of the balls and laughing at himself. But Henry was patient, encouraging the boy to keep trying. Over time, Tommy began to improve, and Henry noticed a rare determination in him, one not often found in children his age. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange, Tommy looked at Henry with a wide smile. "I've never had this much fun, Mr. Henry. Thank you for teaching me." Henry placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Thank you, Tommy. You've brought a joy into my life that I haven't felt in years. It's good to have someone to share these moments with." That evening, Tommy excitedly told Sarah and Lily everything he had learned. Sarah smiled, happy to see her son so animated. She approached Henry as he read on the patio. "I want to thank you again, Mr. Henry. What you're doing for Tommy, for Lily, for me, I don't even know how to repay you." Henry closed his book and looked at her with both seriousness and kindness. "You've already repaid me. You're giving me something I didn't realize I needed. Company, laughter, life. That's worth more than anything." The bond between Henry and Tommy grew stronger each day. To the boy, Henry was more than just a mentor. He was the father figure he had never had. To Henry, Tommy was like a grandson, someone who brought freshness and meaning to his days. Lily, on the other hand, became the light that brightened every corner of the house with her laughter and childlike curiosity. On a chilly morning, Henry decided to take Tommy and Lily on an outing to the city. He asked Edward to prepare the car, and soon they arrived at a local park filled with tall trees and scattered autumn leaves. Tommy and Lily ran across the grass while Henry strolled quietly, watching them. "Mr. Henry, come play with us," Lily called out, tugging on his hand. Henry laughed, surprised, but eventually gave in. He found himself in a leaf-jumping contest, laughing harder than he had in years. The scene caught the attention of people nearby, who watched curiously as the elderly man played like a child. After the park, Henry took them to an ice cream shop. Seated at a small round table, Tommy stared wide-eyed at the menu. "Can we pick any flavor?" Henry smiled and nodded. Lily chose strawberry with chocolate syrup, while Tommy went for vanilla with cookie crumbles. As they enjoyed their ice cream, Henry seized the moment to ask a question that had been on his mind for a while. "Tommy, what do you want to be when you grow up?" The boy hesitated, holding his spoon, before replying, "I want to help people, like you did for us. Maybe I can have a place where people who don't have anywhere to go can stay. A place with warm beds and food." Henry felt a lump in his throat at those words. He reached out and ruffled the boy's hair. "You have a good heart, Tommy. I have no doubt you'll make that dream come true one day." Back at the mansion, Tommy sat beside Henry on the patio. "Mr. Henry, have you always been this good at helping people? Like you helped me?" he asked. Henry gazed at the horizon, thoughtful. "I think, for a long time, I was too busy to notice how much the people around me needed help. I spent my life working, building businesses, accumulating wealth, but I forgot to really see people. When my wife was alive, she did that for me. She had a heart as generous as yours." Tommy remained silent, sensing the sadness in Henry's words. After a few moments, he said softly, "I think your wife would be very proud of everything you've done for us." Henry smiled, his eyes misty. "Thank you, Tommy. Hearing that from you means a great deal." As time went on, Henry's house truly became a home for Sarah, Tommy, and Lily. The children thrived in their new environment, attending school and participating in activities that had once seemed out of reach. Tommy, in particular, began to shine. He not only absorbed everything Henry taught him, but also displayed an intelligence and curiosity that impressed even his teachers. One late afternoon, Henry received an unexpected call from Tommy's school. The principal wanted to congratulate him for having an exemplary student under his care. "Tommy has a special talent, Mr. Henry. He not only learns quickly but also inspires other students. He's the kind of child everyone loves to have around." Henry felt a profound, almost paternal pride. he decided to share the news with Tommy over dinner. When he mentioned the call from the school, the boy turned red with embarrassment as Sarah and Lily clapped with pride. "That's amazing, Tommy," Sarah said, her eyes shining. "I always knew you were special." Henry, smiling, added, "And this is just the beginning. You have so much ahead of you. And you know what I think? It's time for us to take a new step forward." Tommy looked at him, puzzled. "A new step?" "Yes. I want you to start visiting my businesses with me. I want you to see how they operate, how people work, and how everything is connected. I think you'll learn a lot just by observing." Tommy's eyes widened. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. "Are you serious? I can go with you?" Henry nodded. "Of course you can. It's a privilege I'd like to share with you." The next morning, Henry took Tommy to the headquarters of his company, an imposing glass tower in the heart of the city. Upon entering, Tommy was awestruck by the grand reception area, adorned with lush plants and a massive chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Employees glanced curiously at the boy accompanying their boss, but quickly noticed the warmth with which Henry treated him. "Mr. Henry, who is this young man?" An elegant secretary asked politely. "This is Tommy. He's learning about the world of business with me. Consider him a very special intern." Tommy couldn't hide his grin. Throughout the day, Henry introduced him to managers, showed him spreadsheets, and explained how key decisions were made. He used simple examples to ensure Tommy understood and was impressed by the boy's thoughtful and intelligent questions. By the end of the day, as they headed back home, Tommy was exhausted but had an excited sparkle in his eyes. "Mr. Henry, I never thought I'd see anything like that. It's amazing how everything works." Henry smiled, proud. "You have tremendous potential, Tommy. I want you to learn as much as you can because I believe one day you'll be in charge of something big." The boy was silent for a moment, absorbing the words. Then, shyly, he said, "If that happens, I'll do everything I can to help people, just like you helped me and my family." Months went by, and Tommy continued accompanying Henry to his companies regularly. He observed meetings, learned about investments, and even began to familiarize himself with technical terms. The managers, initially skeptical about the presence of a child, soon recognized Tommy's intelligence and charisma, treating him with respect. Meanwhile, Lily was thriving in school with her creative drawings. A teacher, impressed by the girl's talent, suggested she enter a local art contest. Lily was excited but also nervous. "What if I'm not good enough?" she asked Sarah one evening, working on a sketch at the kitchen table. "You're amazing, sweetheart. Just do your best, and that will be more than enough," Sarah replied with an encouraging smile. When Henry heard about the contest, he made sure Lily had the best materials to work with. "Every great artist needs good tools," he said, handing her a set of high-quality colored pencils and paints. On the day of the contest, Henry made it a point to take the whole family to support Lily. The event was held in a modest but well-lit gallery, filled with paintings and sculptures created by children of various ages. Lily was nervous, clutching Tommy's hand as they walked through the corridors. Her piece was a simple yet deeply emotional painting. It depicted herself, Tommy, and Sarah standing together in front of the small house they now called home. When the results were announced, Lily received an honorable mention for her ability to convey emotion through her art. She held her certificate and small medal with pride as everyone applauded. "I told you you were amazing," Tommy whispered, hugging her tightly. Henry was equally moved. He approached Lily and knelt down to her level. "Never let anyone tell you that you're not good enough, Lily. You have a special gift, and I hope you continue sharing it with the world." That night was a celebration. Back at the mansion, Henry organized a small party for Lily, complete with cake, balloons, and simple but meaningful gifts. Lily couldn't stop smiling, delighted by all the attention she was receiving. As everyone laughed and chatted, Henry looked around, feeling a warmth in his heart he hadn't experienced in years. The once quiet house was now filled with laughter and life. For the first time in a long time, he felt part of something bigger than himself. "Thank you for bringing all of this back into my life," he murmured to himself, watching Sarah dance with Lily and Tommy telling a funny story to Edward. As the years passed, Tommy became something of an unofficial apprentice to Henry. The boy, now a teenager, displayed a maturity and intelligence that impressed even Henry's seasoned executives. He attended meetings, took detailed notes, and occasionally shared opinions that were met with respect from the professionals around him. One day, while walking together on the property, Henry decided to share something he had been holding back. "Tommy, there's something important I want to show you today. It's a part of me and my story that few people know about." Curious, Tommy followed Henry to what appeared to be a storage room at the back of the mansion. Inside, among boxes and old furniture, Henry pulled out a large wooden chest. He carefully opened it, revealing photo albums, yellowed letters, and small keepsakes that had been lovingly preserved. "This was the life I shared with my wife, Margaret," Henry began, his voice thick with emotion. "She was the heart and soul of this house. Margaret spent her time helping the children at a local orphanage. She used to say that even if we couldn't have children of our own, we could still make a difference in the lives of others." Tommy leafed through the album as he listened, seeing photos of Margaret smiling as she held children or organized events. "She looks amazing, Mr. Henry. You must miss her a lot, don't you?" "Every single day, Tommy. She had a light that brightened everything around her. When I lost her, the house became so empty. For years, I buried myself in work, trying to fill that void, but I never could. Not until you and your family arrived." Tommy paused, looking at Henry with a serious expression. "Do you think my mom, Lily, and I brought that light back?" Henry smiled, though his eyes glistened with tears. "Yes, you did. You, with your kindness and curiosity, and Lily, with her infectious joy. Even your mother, with her strength and dedication. Somehow, you gave me a second chance at life." From that moment, Henry began involving Tommy in even more challenging projects. He asked the teenager to write reports, analyze small investments, and even pitch ideas for social campaigns. Tommy excelled at every task, showing not only his grasp of Henry's teachings, but also his ability to apply them with empathy. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to care for the mansion with a dedication that impressed everyone. She and Henry developed a friendship rooted in mutual respect. Many evenings, Sarah found herself talking with Henry on the patio about her hopes for the future, especially her dreams for Tommy and Lily. Inspired by these conversations, Henry began thinking about ways to expand his impact. He had resources that could transform lives, and Margaret's example, coupled with Tommy's enthusiasm, reignited in him the desire to do more. Henry started to notice that his time was running out. He had aged significantly over the past few years, and though his mind remained sharp, his body was beginning to show signs of frailty. Determined to leave a lasting legacy, he called for a meeting with Tommy, Sarah, and Lily on a sunny afternoon in the garden. Seated in a comfortable chair, his eyes fixed on the flowers Margaret had loved so dearly, Henry began to speak. "I have something important to share with you all. Since the day Tommy helped me on that street, my life has completely changed. There are no words to express how much you mean to me. That's why I want to ensure that, even when I'm no longer here, you'll have everything you need to move forward." Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but Henry raised his hand, signaling her to wait. "Over the past few months, I've been reorganizing my companies and assets. Tommy, you've proven that you're more than capable of leading. Your vision, intelligence, and kindness are qualities that are rare to find in someone so young. I want you to know that, when the time is right, all of this will be yours." Tommy's eyes widened, the weight of Henry's words settling heavily on him. "Mr. Henry, I don't know what to say. I don't think I'm ready for something this big. You have time, my boy, and when the moment comes, I know you'll be prepared. I'll be here to guide you for as long as I can." Henry then turned to Sarah. "Sarah, you've transformed this house. Your dedication and love have made it a warm and welcoming place once again. I want you to know that this property isn't just mine. It's yours. You are my family, and this house will always be your home." Sarah placed a hand on her chest, her eyes glistening with tears. "Mr. Henry, we could never repay all you've done for us, but I promise we'll continue to care for everything with the same love and respect." Finally, Henry looked at Lily. "And you, my little artist, will continue to bring color and joy to this world. I want to support your dreams and help you achieve everything you wish for. Never let anyone dim your imagination or your light." Lily ran to him, wrapping her arms tightly around him. "Thank you, Mr. Henry. I promise I'll paint the most beautiful pictures, all inspired by you and everything you've done for us." The meeting ended with the family embracing, united by a bond that transcended blood. For Henry, that moment was the realization of everything Margaret had always dreamed of, using what they had to transform lives and create memories that would last forever. Time passed, and Henry's frailty became more apparent. Although his mind remained sharp, there were days when he needed help even with simple tasks. Tommy, now 18, had taken on increasing responsibilities in the businesses, while Sarah and Lily ensured the mansion remained a place of love and care. On a cold winter day, Henry asked to see Tommy in his office. Sitting in his leather chair, surrounded by books and old documents, he looked at the young man with a mix of pride and seriousness. "Tommy, I want you to know that the work we've done together has been one of the greatest joys of my life. I've watched you grow into someone anyone would be proud to call family." Tommy, seated on the other side of the desk, listened silently, trying to hold back his emotions. He knew Henry was preparing for something he didn't want to admit: the possibility of leaving. "I'm only who I am today because you believed in me, Mr. Henry. Without your help, I don't even know where we'd be." Henry smiled, but his expression quickly grew serious again. "Promise me one thing, Tommy. When I'm no longer here, take care of everything with the same love you've always shown. Take care of your mother, your sister, and the people who rely on our businesses. This isn't just work, it's a responsibility. I promise," Tommy said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. That same evening, Henry felt weaker than usual. Sarah noticed his pallor as she helped him up the stairs to his room. "You need to rest, Mr. Henry. You've been pushing yourself too hard." Henry smiled gently at her. "Thank you, Sarah. You're like a daughter to me. Knowing you're here gives me peace." In the days that followed, Henry remained confined to his room. Tommy, Sarah, and Lily took turns staying by his side, reading books, telling stories, or simply holding his hand. Despite his frailty, Henry still found the strength to smile whenever he saw Lily drawing at his bedside table or Tommy eagerly sharing updates about the businesses. One morning, as snow fell softly outside, Henry called everyone into his room. With a weak but tender voice, he said, "I want you all to know that you've been the best part of my final years. You gave me something no amount of money could ever buy: a family. I am forever grateful that you came into my life." They embraced tightly, the room filled with a poignant silence broken only by the gentle sound of the wind outside. Henry closed his eyes, feeling at peace for the first time in years, surrounded by the people he loved. The harsh winter pressed on, and Henry's mansion took on an atmosphere of quiet solemnity. After weeks of battling his failing health, Henry passed away peacefully in the early hours of the morning, a faint smile on his face as though he had finally found the tranquility he had long sought. The news of Henry's passing brought a profound sadness to everyone in the house. For Sarah, Tommy, and Lily, it felt as though they had lost a pillar, someone who had become more than a benefactor. He was a father, a grandfather, a friend. The next morning, the house was steeped in a quiet mourning. Edward, the loyal driver, took charge of organizing the arrangements for the wake, which would be held at the mansion, a place Henry had loved so deeply. Throughout the day, people began to arrive to pay their respects. Employees from his companies, old friends, and even children he had helped through donations and social projects. Each visitor brought heartfelt memories of how Henry had impacted their lives. Tommy stood by Sarah and Lily throughout the ceremony, greeting visitors with a maturity that impressed everyone. Yet inside, he wrestled with a storm of emotions. Henry had been the figure who inspired him to dream big, to believe that he could be more than his humble beginnings might suggest. As the hours went on, Tommy realized just how loved and respected Henry had been. The stories people shared reminded him of everything he had learned from the man: kindness, leadership, and the power to transform lives. After the wake, Henry's lawyer asked to meet with the family in the library. He carried a folder containing the will, a document Henry had carefully prepared in advance. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, tinged with both tension and anticipation. The lawyer began reading Henry's will, explaining his wishes in detail. He left the mansion and all his assets to Sarah, Tommy, and Lily, emphasizing that he considered them his true family. He also stipulated that Tommy would take over leadership of the companies, supported by a board of advisors until he felt fully prepared. At the end of the reading, the lawyer handed Tommy a personal letter from Henry. With trembling hands, Tommy opened the envelope and began to read. The lawyer began reading Henry's will, explaining his wishes in detail. He left the mansion and all his assets to Sarah, Tommy, and Lily, emphasizing that he considered them his true family. He also stipulated that Tommy would take over leadership of the companies, supported by a board of advisors until he felt fully prepared. At the end of the reading, the lawyer handed Tommy a personal letter from Henry. With trembling hands, Tommy opened the envelope and began to read. "Dear Tommy, by the time you read these words, I will have already departed. My time in this world has come to an end, but before I go, I need to let my heart speak one last time. The day I met you was the day hope returned to my life. Before you, I felt like a dry leaf blown by the wind, without purpose, without joy. I had everything, and yet I had nothing. My wife had passed, our dreams were left unfinished, and I had no children to fill my house with laughter or love. I was tired, Tommy, tired of living. And then you appeared, like an angel sent by God, or perhaps by my dear wife, whom I like to think was watching me from above. You brought light where there was darkness, companionship where there was silence. You helped me not because you had to, but because your heart was pure and generous. Afterward, your little sister Emily and your mother, Sarah, came into my life. Together, you all filled my home and my life with something I thought I'd never have again: a family. I heard laughter again, saw children running in the garden, and felt the warmth of a sincere hug. Together, we created precious memories. Our games, our outings, the ice creams on warm days. It was those moments that gave me the strength to carry on. For this reason, my dear boy, I want you to know that everything I have now belongs to you and your family. You transformed my solitude into joy, my sadness into peace. Don't let this house become empty again. Care for it and the businesses with the same love you cared for me. I know I can trust you to continue spreading the kindness and light that made me so happy. I love you all. With all my love and gratitude, Henry." Tommy finished reading, tears streaming down his face. He looked at Sarah and Lily, who were also crying, and then said with a steady voice, "I will honor everything he taught us. I'll make him proud." With the will read and the responsibilities officially transferred to Tommy, life at the mansion began to settle into a new rhythm. The grief over Henry's loss remained deep, but the promise to uphold his legacy gave the family renewed strength. Tommy embraced his new role with seriousness, dividing his time between his studies and managing the companies. He faced the initial challenges with determination, relying on the guidance of Henry's trusted advisors and the wisdom the man had imparted to him. The young man spent countless hours in the boardroom, studying documents, listening to ideas, and sharing his own visions for the future. Sarah, meanwhile, found a way to keep Henry's memory alive. She continued to care for the mansion as she always had, but now she also opened its doors for small charity events, just as Henry and Margaret had done in the past. Lily assisted at these events, showcasing her paintings and captivating guests with her youthful enthusiasm. One sunny afternoon, Tommy hosted his first major meeting as the interim leader of the companies. He had spent weeks planning a new social initiative inspired by Henry's vision and his own life experiences. The project, named Margaret's House, would provide shelter and support to homeless families, helping them rebuild their lives. When it was time to present his idea, Tommy spoke with passion and confidence, sharing his story and explaining how Henry had transformed his life. He concluded his speech with a phrase that left the room silent. "If there's one thing I learned from Henry, it's that our true legacy isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we share." The room erupted in applause. The advisors, some of whom had initially doubted Tommy's abilities, were deeply impressed by his clarity of vision and empathy. The project was approved unanimously, and Tommy left the meeting with a sense of fulfillment, knowing he was on the right path to honoring the man he so greatly admired. Back at the mansion, Tommy shared the news with Sarah and Lily. "Margaret's house is going to be real. Everything Henry taught us is becoming something tangible, something that will help so many families like ours." Lily hugged her brother tightly, while Sarah, her eyes brimming with tears, smiled warmly. "He would be so proud of you, Tommy. And wherever he is, I know he's smiling." The day of the Margaret's House inauguration arrived on a bright spring morning. The event was held at the main property, where Henry had spent his final years with Tommy, Sarah, and Lily. The mansion was elegantly decorated with flowers and banners displaying the project's name. The garden was filled with guests, including business leaders, partners, journalists, and, most importantly, families who would benefit from the initiative. Tommy, now 20 years old, stood on a small stage in the center of the garden. Wearing a suit Henry had given him years before, he looked out at the crowd, feeling a mix of emotion and nervousness. But as he remembered Henry's support, he found the strength to begin his speech. "Welcome to the inauguration of the Margaret's House project," he started, his voice steady. "Today, we are here to celebrate not just the opening of a physical space, but the continuation of a legacy. This project is more than a shelter. It is a symbol of hope, inspired by the kindness and love of a man who changed my family's life." He paused, glancing at Sarah and Lily in the front row, smiling proudly. "When I met Henry, I was just a boy trying to protect my sister in a cold alley. He taught me that even in the hardest times, there is room for kindness. Today, I want to share that with other families who need a new chance, just like mine did." The audience applauded warmly, and Tommy continued. "Margaret's House is dedicated to the memory of Henry and his wife, Margaret, two people who believed in the power of changing lives. My commitment is to keep that spirit alive and to ensure that everyone who walks through our doors finds not just a roof over their heads, but a reason to believe in the future." After the speech, Tommy cut the symbolic ribbon, officially marking the opening of the first center of the initiative. Guests were invited to tour the space, a warm and functional facility featuring bedrooms, a communal kitchen, and living areas. The walls were adorned with Lily's paintings, depicting colorful and lively scenes inspired by her memories at Henry's mansion. As the day came to an end and the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Tommy, Sarah, and Lily stayed behind in the garden. They sat together, watching the serene sunset in silence. "You did it, Tommy," Sarah said, her smile radiating pride. "You turned everything Henry gave us into something that will last forever." Tommy looked at his mother and sister, then back at the mansion, which now seemed more alive than ever. "I just did what he taught me," He always said true wealth lies in what we share. I'll never forget that. As the night fell, Tommy felt the gentle breeze brush against his face, almost like a whisper from afar. He closed his eyes for a moment, imagining Henry there with them, smiling in approval. In that instant, he felt a deep certainty. Though Henry was gone, his spirit would live on in every act of kindness and hope that Tommy helped to build. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment sharing your favorite part. See you in the next story.